A blurry figure caught on a trail camera. 2 hikers vanished, and the only clue left was a distorted scream. You squint at the screen. The pixels seem to breathe in the dark, an amorphous blur shifting ever so slightly as your eyes adjust. You've rewound this exact frame 5 times now, each time hoping your mind will fill in a face, or a name, or something logical, but instead, there's only this thing. Not quite human, not quite clear. It was taken in the Cascade Mountains. 2 hours after midnight. 2 hikers, locals, late 20s, both experienced, had set up camp near a frozen ridge. Their GPS tracks end right there. No sign of struggle, no animal prints, just that weird freeze frame from a trail camera mounted on a pine tree. No time stamp, only static, and then a piercing, warped scream embedded in the file's audio. Some call it a software glitch. Others know better. You lean back, phone buzzing with a new comment on the video. Bro, I swear I saw this thing in northern Quebec. Summer of 2019. No joke. Another viewer writes, looks like a skinny man in pain, but it wasn't moving normal. And there it is again. That phrase, wasn't moving normal. Look, if you're here expecting answers, I've got good and bad news. The good, you're not alone. The bad, you're probably not gonna sleep well after this. And yeah, you probably won't survive this curiosity rabbit hole. But hey, it's your night to waste. Right? So before you get too carried away with the mysteries that are about to unfold, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Also, let me know where you're tuning in from. Drop your location and local time down in the comments. You'd be surprised how many people are listening to this at 2:03 a.m. with only a cat, a lamp, and one eye nervously watching the hallway. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The trail cam footage was first submitted anonymously to a Reddit thread, no sleep, naturally, and was quickly buried under fake comments, pixel analysis debates, and people arguing over Bigfoot versus Slenderman. But one user noticed something others missed: the distortion. Not camera distortion, spatial. The tree lines around the figure curve slightly inward, as if gravity had been locally warped. You know those old funhouse mirrors that make your head stretch out like a noodle? Imagine that, but affecting the world, not just the reflection. Later analysis, done off the record by a physics undergrad at a New Mexico tech lab, revealed subtle frame shifts at 1.4-second intervals. Almost like the image was pulsing, breathing. This wasn't filmed, he said in a DM. This was recorded by something not meant to be captured. Now, the kicker, behind that figure is what appears to be a frost-scorched stretch of grass. Unusual for that elevation. Even more unusual, the grass is pressed inward, as if something curled in on itself and stood up, suddenly. There's no clear face in the image, but the proportions scream wrong. Way too long limbs, a jawline that might not even be a jaw, and a sliver of something white, almost skeletal, where the mouth would be, if you dare call it a mouth. Historians still argue whether this specific clip even belongs in the SCP-096 case files. Some claim it was part of a Foundation leak. Others say it's the work of some TikTok AI algorithm trained on creepypasta. But what's more telling is how many unrelated search terms suddenly started trending in the same week: face blur creature, long limbs scream, and how to tell if a camera is cursed. Yeah, not great signs. And remember how we used to laugh at stories about medieval villages wearing mirrors on their foreheads to ward off evil spirits? Turns out, they were onto something, because this thing, if you look at its face, even just see it in an image, it knows. It hunts you across time zones and Wi-Fi signals and sleeping dreams and, well, I digress. There's a Forest Rangers report I'll get into in a bit. He found something similar, but with sound, not image. A scream that lasted exactly 4.7 seconds. Played backward, forward, then backwards again, until the tape melted. But before we get there, just take a second. Look at the edge of the screen. That's where the figure lingers. always just slightly outside clarity, like it wants to be known. Or maybe it just wants to be seen. And that, my friend, is the problem. Because the moment you see his face, he sees you. You scroll deeper into the archives. There it is, SCP-096, codename, the Shy Guy. A creature so fragile in its misery, yet so unstoppable in its wrath. You remember reading it years ago, laughing nervously with your friends on Discord, thinking, okay, that's creepy, but it's just fiction, right? And yet, there's something about this file that hits differently now. The original document is dry and clinical, written with that sterile foundation tone, like someone trying to make a nightmare sound like lab work. Containment class, Euclid. Description: a humanoid measuring approximately 2.38 meters in height. Emaciated and devoid of pigmentation, with elongated arms and no visible facial features, until it's too late. The first case was documented in the Alps. Or at least that's what the redacted coordinates suggest. Hikers again, always hikers. 2 university students and their guide went missing during what should have been a routine ascent. Rescue teams found their gear intact, their footprints zigzagging into thin air, and a broken camera lodged into a rock crevice. Still recording. The footage, unusable, too corrupted. Some claimed it melted the viewing equipment. Others said the file simply refused to open. But here's where it gets weird. Tucked away in the footnotes is an overlooked detail, a mirrored lens found at the scene. Slightly cracked, with a reddish smudge on its edge. Unidentified residue, the report states, but the same phrase shows up again 5 years later, in a completely unrelated case in Siberia. Historians still argue whether this was the same 096 incident, or if there's more than one of these things slithering around Earth's lonelier corners. You lean back and picture it, an entity that doesn't attack you. It mourns you, violently, the moment someone, anyone, sees its face. Even in a blurry image or a reflected surface. It enters a state of catastrophic distress. Then it begins its pursuit. No matter where you are, no matter how far you run. You could be on a submarine in the Pacific, or camping in the Arctic tundra, and SCP-096 will find you. Not walk, not track, just move, unstoppably, not for rage, but because it has to. A classified experiment, once revealed in a leaked Foundation memo, tested this theory to its limits. A D-class personnel was given a photo of 96's face and placed inside a sealed bunker 3 kilometers underground. Within 27 minutes, the walls began vibrating. A local seismograph, meant for earthquake monitoring, spiked. They thought it was a mining explosion. It wasn't. It was SCP-096. Tunneling through bedrock with no tools. Just arms. And grief. By the time security forces entered the chamber, only bone dust remained. And the photo, crumpled, but intact, still sharp enough to doom the next viewer. You ask yourself, why the face? Why this rule of sight? Why not sound, or smell, or proximity? Fringe theorists suggest SCP-96's face may be a quantum trigger, an embedded symbol of some ancient visual curse. There's even an old Babylonian legend that loosely mirrors this, a weeping giant whose face must never be seen. Or it would unmake the world. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe 096 is just the modern skin of something older. And the term, Shy Guy, that wasn't Foundation jargon. It came from the field teams, used as shorthand. Probably to ease their nerves. But there's irony in it, isn't there? The one thing that sets it off is the very thing it's desperate to hide. You can't help but feel pity. Imagine being so tortured by your own image that anyone who sees it has to die. Not because you hate them, but because you're so ashamed, so broken, so cosmically wrong, that the universe itself revolts. Still, even with all this data, you find yourself returning to the simplest question. How does something like this stay hidden in the age of smartphones and satellite feeds? One answer: it doesn't. There's an obscure report out of Kyrgyzstan, buried in the SCP archives, where a civilian livestream accidentally captured a pale humanoid sprinting across a distant ridge. The viewers thought it was fake. The streamer laughed it off. He didn't laugh when his cabin was torn apart 3 days later, walls shredded. No body found, just his webcam blinking into silence. The feed was archived. The video still exists, technically, but any attempts to watch it. Immediate file corruption. The Foundation, you see, doesn't just contain creatures. It contains memes, cognitive triggers, viral concepts. SCP-096 is one of the deadliest, not because of its teeth or its claws, but because of what it does to information. To curiosity, to people like you. So you keep scrolling, keep watching, keep wondering, knowing full well, you probably shouldn't. You shouldn't be here. Not in this folder, not reading this report at 2:37 a.m. with your room dimly lit and a sudden draft you don't remember feeling 5 minutes ago. But you are, and now you're following the tracks, figuratively. Sure. But someone once followed them literally. You've pulled up an old ranger report from the Canadian Rockies. Winter patrol, standard solo run, half snowshoe hike, half ATV ride. This was 2015, early March. Ranger's name redacted, naturally, but his notes, unedited. He'd filed them on an encrypted drive after his early retirement, probably assuming no one would ever read them again. But now you are. It begins like this. Northwestern Ridge Trail, no animal movement. Found something weird, deep prints. Barefoot, but long toes, not clawed, just wrong. The ranger follows the prints uphill. They snake between trees, sometimes vanishing completely, then reappearing 20 meters ahead. You imagine that, fresh snow, silence pressing in on your ears, your own boots crunching behind you, and then prints that skip like someone teleporting. No drag, no weight displacement. The notes continue. Heard something at 4:11 p.m. wind. Maybe, but it sounded like low crying, almost like a hurt elk. Not sure. You feel the tension mounting between the lines. He mentions the temperature dropped suddenly. Trees got quieter. Even the ravens stopped squawking. Then he writes, smell of ozone, cold metal, maybe, could be storm coming, but I've never felt this kind of silence before. Historians still argue whether the ranger's journal even relates to SCP-096. Some point out there were no reported deaths nearby. Others claim the ranger only survived because he never saw the face, only the aftermath. Because a mile later, he finds something else. The snow is pressed flat, like a helicopter landed there, but no tracks in or out. Pine needles scorched black, a faint red smear on a tree trunk. 5 feet high, shaped like a stretched handprint. No blood, just some kind of sticky, viscous residue. He touches it. Mistake number 1. Felt like syrup, but bitter, metallic. Wiped it on my coat. Regret that instantly. His next entries come faster. Panicked. Footprints again. They stop at the edge of a cliff. No fall marks. Just gone. And then this. Heard something breathing right behind me. Turned. Nothing there. You can almost hear his voice shaking through the page. This isn't fiction, not some Monster of the Week podcast script. This was a trained wildlife ranger, a guy who'd seen bear maulings, mountain lion attacks, frostbite victims, and this is what broke him. He turned in his badge 2 days later, after reportedly waking up in the middle of the night and tearing all the mirrors out of his cabin. His neighbors said he covered the windows with aluminum foil. His last public photo was at a bar, half-shaved, eyes swollen from crying, scrawling on a napkin, "Don't look at him. Don't look at him." And here's where it gets truly bizarre. A week after his resignation, a local trail camera, one he'd installed himself, captured a single frame before the lens cracked. A tall, pale figure partially obscured by mist. Its arms hanging too long and slack. The image was deleted from the Foundation servers 6 hours after upload. But you know how the internet works. Nothing ever truly disappears. Fringe researchers call it the standing blur. They argue it's not just SCP-096, it's a field phenomenon. A signal. Some suggest it's a side effect of dimensional bleeding, a slow erosion between our world and something colder. Something watching, something trying to form here. You remember that YouTuber who once joked, "If I see 096, I'll just look away." He hasn't posted since 2022. His last video was titled, "Something's outside my window. I think it's crying." People speculated it was a skit, but no one's seen or heard from him since. All that's left are comment threads filled with timestamps, blurry freeze frames, and viewers debating whether the reflection in the glass showed a face. Not his face. Something else's. You close the ranger's report. But it lingers in your head, the footprints that began but never ended. The sound of sobbing in a forest without birds. And that bitter syrup stuff no one could ever identify. The Foundation still refuses to acknowledge the ranger's story. But you know the truth. And maybe that's worse. You look at your window now. You didn't leave it open earlier, did you? You stare at the drone footage again. It's grainy, sure, but not just because of altitude or snow glare. No, this is a different kind of distortion. The kind that makes your eyes ache the longer you stare. You tap the spacebar, frame by frame, zoom in. Something's moving down there, not walking, gliding, like its legs aren't propelling it. But something else is pulling it forward. Frame 231, white shape. Frame 232, white shape, closer. Frame 233, gone. This was 2013, somewhere over northern Norway. Our NATO-affiliated reconnaissance drone flying routine pathfinding tests along a glacial ridge. Its thermal sensors begin failing halfway through. Then the main camera feed goes erratic, flickers. Vertical tearing. Brief static bursts. Not even Hollywood could fake it that well. The technician operating the drone, identified later in leaked reports only as Unit 4. Visual Division, said the interface stopped responding for exactly 37 seconds. Long enough for the drone to descend 120 meters and nearly crash into a frozen cliff face. Long enough for it to capture something. The footage, of course, was locked under Foundation Code Blue 7. But like all secrets, it leaked. A backup file hit a private Discord server 5 months later. You saw it. You remember. Not what it showed, just how it felt, like it stared back. You revisit the logs from the crash site. When a Norwegian recovery team went to retrieve the wreckage, the ice shelf nearby had been shaved smooth, like sandpaper across granite. No footprints, but the embedded metal from the drone's frame had melted and refrozen. Curled inward like it had folded itself away. And then, the big red flag. One member of the recovery team went missing 48 hours later. He left his boots behind, neatly arranged next to his bunk. His laptop was open, paused on frame 233 of the drone footage. His headphones were still on the desk. The audio log had one sentence recorded. The only words he spoke. "I saw the face." And then silence. You think back to something from that SCP-096 file, once visual contact is established. SCP-096 enters a hysterical emotional state and begins to track down and terminate the observer. Key word, observer. You don't even need to understand what you're seeing, just to have seen it. And yet, the face never shows clearly in the drone footage. So why the missing tech? Why the corrupted feed? Here's the working theory from fringe researcher Dr. O&M, whose Visual Cognition and Hostile Entities paper was only published on the Foundation Darknet before he vanished in 2020. SCP-096's facial recognition trigger is entangled not with direct cognition, but with intent. To search for the face is to invite it. To try seeing it is enough. Historians still argue whether that makes 096 a biological being, a mimetic virus, or some hybrid of both. Some even claim its face has no fixed structure at all, that it appears uniquely terrifying to each viewer. A personalized nightmare, stitched to order. That's the part that sticks with you now. The idea that even a blurred, broken image might count as a sighting, that a feeling might be enough. You pull up a quote from one of the NATO techs during post-mission debrief. "The shape didn't walk, it just kept collapsing forward. Like it didn't want to exist. Like it was ashamed of itself and trying to fold away. There's something heartbreakingly alien in that. Not violent, not evil, just wrong. A shape that shouldn't be. A presence that hates being seen more than it hates anything else. And that scream, barely audible in the wreckage logs, recorded at -18 decibels. Thin, pained, and not quite human, almost like a child trying to cry through a throat that forgot how. You shake your head. You don't know what scares you more. The idea that this creature is hunting people who saw its face, or that maybe, just maybe, it's hunting because it wants you to see it. Needs you to. Like an inverted narcissist. Something broken open so long ago it forgot how to be whole unless it's destroying the very thing that saw it. And the drone footage, gone from public servers now. Foundation finally swept it all. But copies always linger. Old Reddit archives. Dead torrents. USBs in bottom drawers. One viewer, screen name, Stare at the Snow, posted a warning last year. Don't pause frame 233. Just don't. You wonder if they did. You wonder where they are now. The voice on the tape is older than you expected. Cracked, gravelly, with that kind of calm only people who've seen things they weren't supposed to can summon. You press play again, letting the hiss of the tape deck roll over you like distant wind. Then it speaks. They told us not to camp there. Said the forest doesn't echo right after midnight. Thought it was just superstition. The speaker identifies himself only as Marcus, former SCP-19 logistics officer. Technically retired. Actually, well, people in his field don't just retire. They either vanish, go mad, or fake their deaths well enough to escape whatever deals they made. He's talking about the Screaming Forest, officially the Pine Hollow Reserve in northeastern Oregon. Unofficially, it's one of those places Foundation field agents avoid even joking about. Too many missing campers, too many silent nights broken by a sudden, bone-dry shriek no one can explain. You lean forward as Marcus continues. It wasn't loud. That's what I keep trying to explain to people. You read, scream. You think piercing. This was flat, like someone took a human voice and vacuum sealed it. You pause the tape, jotting that down. Vacuum sealed scream. That's going to haunt you later. Marcus and a small transport crew had been rerouting a low-tier SCP in the area, a forgettable creature. Something about magnetized insects and humming. Nothing major, but then a distress ping lit up from a trail camera near the hollow's edge. The logs claim it was triggered by non-bipedal movement. But the footage shows something tall, thin, lurching out of frame in the wrong direction. Like the video forgot which way time moves. Marcus continues. We called it in. Asked for visual clearance. Command said hold position. We did. For 5 minutes. That's when the static started. He's not exaggerating. Static actually seeped into real air. Like, not from radios, into the air itself. Their hearing dulled. The trees around them seemed to shiver. One crew member, someone Marcus refers to as L, screamed once. Collapsed. And was unresponsive for 12 hours. Later scans showed no brain damage. But he couldn't speak again. Just pointed at empty corners of the room for days. Like he saw something that wasn't finished forming. And here's the punch. A Foundation auditor ran a routine electromagnetic sweep of the area afterward. The soil still carried faint residual pulses. Like a recording, but organic. One sample emitted low, broken breathing when played back as audio. Like a slowed-down panic attack with lips that never quite seal. Historians still argue whether this incident belongs to the SCP-096 timeline. There's no confirmed visual contact. No death reports. No pursuit logs. But Marcus insists. I heard the cry. I felt the grief in it. Not anger. Not rage. It was mourning. And then something moved just behind the truck. Something that didn't want to be followed. Something that wanted to disappear but couldn't until someone saw it. That's when the Foundation pulled the plug. Cameras wiped. Logs scrubbed. Trail sealed off as sudden soil instability risk. The trees were left to grow over everything. You know what Marcus did after that mission. He transferred, not out of SCP-19, out of the country, changed his name, took a job tending lighthouses. No windows facing the woods. He said in a later interview, "Just see. See doesn't watch you back. You press play again." Marcus whispers, "You ever been in a room where something's crying, but you can't find where it's coming from? That's what it felt like. That's how it still feels. You pause the recording and check your room. No sound, but now the silence feels shaped, like it's pressing against your skin. You imagine being there, in that forest. Static fuzzing in the wind. Pine trees bending a little too far without snapping. Something pale, maybe wet looking, maybe just damp from snowmelt. Crouching just outside your vision. Not approaching, not hiding, just existing in a way that bends the rules of normal." There's a clip Marcus sent you at the end. 1 second of corrupted audio. But if you play it backwards, and you have, you can almost hear it. A shudder, a click, and then a whisper. Don't look, you already did. The file name is anomaly_audio_unedited_camp.wav. No foundation tag, no metadata, just a name, a corrupted waveform, and a 57-second runtime. You're not even sure how it landed in your inbox. It just appeared after you posted about SCP-096 sightings. No sender, no message, just that blank subject line and a download icon glowing like an open dare. You double-check your headphones. Volume low, lights still dim. Your hand lingers over the play button longer than it should. You're not exactly worried about what you'll hear, you're worried about what you might feel. Click. It starts with dead air. Not silence. There's a difference. This has texture. You can hear the microstatic flutter of a cheap condenser mic. Something hums in the background, probably wind against canvas, but then it sharpens into rhythm. Not natural, not wind, something, breathing. The breathing continues. Inhale, exhale, slow, deliberate, like something's just standing there. Inches from the mic, watching, waiting. At second 23, the pitch shifts, a dragging sound, like fingers trailing across nylon. A tent, maybe, then, one long creak. As if weights shifting onto a floorboard that shouldn't exist in the middle of the Utah wilderness. You feel the hair on your arms rise. Your room temperature drops a few notches. And then, right around second 39, a voice. But not a voice, more like a vocal shape. A wordless exhale, stretched into unnatural lengths, ending in a vibration that makes your teeth buzz. There's no scream, no roar, just one final, whispered inhale, and then the audio ends. You sit still for a moment. Heart pounding, ears ringing slightly. You rewind and listen again. This time analyzing the waveform visually. There are patterns, not musical, not speech, but something that looks organized. Almost too perfect, like the breath was looped with surgical precision. Not random. You've run it through 4 different spectrograms. One researcher on a closed IRC board claimed to find letters hidden in the sound waves, SCEME, but was laughed off the server. Another decoded the breath into Morse, coming up with just 2 words, "Help me." Historians still argue whether the Camp 10 audio represents SCP-96's presence or something entirely separate. There were no known sightings in the Utah Basin at that time. But then again, absence of data has never been proof of safety. You know that now. The backstory to the file is murky. It supposedly came from a campground outside Moab. A solo backpacker had been live streaming his trip, standard GoPro setup. Audio recorder for a vlog. He had a routine: start a fire, tell a story, crash in the tent. That night, he never finished his sentence. The stream cut to static. Search and rescue found the fire still crackling. Phone still warm. No blood, no tracks. Just the tent torn open from the inside, zipper intact. A deep dent in the dirt suggested something crouched there for hours after he vanished. Just breathing. And in the GoPro's final corrupted frame, the faint outline of something long and pale, just at the edge of the light. The Foundation confiscated the footage. Official report says, predatory animal attack, subject fled campsite. but the raw audio survived on a backup SD card, uploaded anonymously 2 days later to a tiny forum for EVP hobbyists. It's been scrubbed repeatedly, but you know how to dig. You always find what others don't. And maybe that's the danger, because the more you listen, the more your brain fills in the blanks. You want to imagine it's just breathing, but then you notice something new underneath the audio, buried so deep it barely registers. A pulse, like a second heart, not yours, not human. You blink, it's still there. You pause the track, suddenly overwhelmed by the soundless pressure in the room. There's no face in the file, but your body doesn't care. Your nerves know something looked back through that audio, like a ghost of a ghost, a memory of something meant to be unseen. Yet now it lingers in your ears. That's when you catch it. Reflection. Your monitor's black screen shows more than your face now. Something shifts behind your shoulder. You spin around. Nothing. You close the file, but you don't delete it. Because part of you needs to know. What if it was him? What if you just listened to the breath of SCP-096? And what if he listened back? You sit frozen for a minute, still staring at the black screen. It doesn't move, doesn't flicker, but it feels like it should. Like something's waiting for you to blink. You tell yourself it's just residual tension from the audio, just nerves. And then you remember, SCP-096 doesn't care if you believe. It only cares if you see. You shake it off and pull up the original containment notes again. It's time to confront the one rule that matters. What's in a face? The file is painfully clear on this. SCP-96's face is the trigger. The key, the matchstick in a forest of dry kindling. And the strange part, most people who see it don't even know what they're looking at. There are no features described. No eyes, nose, or mouth in detail. Just a vague sense of wrongness, like looking into a reflection that almost mirrors you. But not quite. Researchers once ran an experiment using a Class D test subject and an old family photo. They digitally replaced one background figure with SCP-96's face. Blurred slightly at first, the subject glanced at the image, frowned, then smiled faintly. 5 minutes later, every light in the observation wing blew out at once. The subject was found reduced to a slurry of blood and sinew. Not ripped, pulped, like his body had been crumpled into origami by something too fast to perceive. No one else saw the image. Except one researcher. She lasted 6 hours. That's when they discovered it. Peripheral recognition counts. It doesn't matter if you stare at the face directly. If your brain processes it at all, the trigger is pulled. Historians still argue whether the reaction is neurological or ontological. Is it something in your brain that flips? Or does SCP-096 somehow rewrite physics around its own existence? One fringe theory suggests 096 isn't reacting to you seeing it, it's reacting to being seen. That every observer tears a hole in its veil, and that's what sends it into that impossible, mournful fury. The term, shy guy, as you already know, was coined as gallows humor, but the Foundation took it seriously. Entire protocols were rewritten after 96's 2010 breach, procedures involving blindfolded containment teams, face-obscuring light filters, and on-site neural dampeners. It didn't help. One of the most chilling aspects. SCP-096 doesn't choose to kill. It has to, as if compelled by some deep, biological imperative. It doesn't care who saw its face, friend, stranger, camera tech, it reacts the same. The moment someone knows, they're already dead. The delay is just a courtesy. That's what makes the idea so terrifying. You don't even get a chance to process your mistake. You might be walking your dog, or watching a weird meme someone sent you, or scrolling through a forum like this one. Then, your body stiffens. Something primal kicks in, and somewhere, whether it's a mile away or across the globe, SCP-096 starts moving. And oh, it moves. Not like a person, not even like a predator. It moves like grief weaponized. It screams, not in fury, but in anguish. It shatters walls, bends steel, breaks time if it has to. And then, when it finds you, It stops screaming, and starts shaking. That's the part people don't mention. That trembling, like it's about to cry. Or already is. The aftermath. No one knows what the last few seconds feel like. No one survives. No witnesses. No cameras. Even reinforced surveillance gear corrodes after a breach. As if the concept of what happened becomes too heavy for reality to hold. And yet, you still look. We all do. That's the problem. That's the point. We are creatures obsessed with understanding what frightens us. The moment someone whispers, "Don't look," it's already too late. You were always going to look. And now, you're thinking about it. The face. What it might look like. How it might be shaped. Just one quick glance. Just a guess. Just enough to make the blood in your fingers turn colder. You ever stare at static long enough that it starts to form patterns? Yeah, that's where it starts. You remember the GoPro clip. Not from YouTube, no. It never lasted that long. It was posted briefly on an obscure mountaineering blog in early 2016 before it vanished. The post was titled simply, "Last Climb." It was filmed on the western edge of the Himalayan plateau. Not a tourist route. Remote. Dangerous. The kind of climb only professionals or the truly obsessed would attempt. The climber's name, Arjun Malhotra, 32 years old, no stranger to near death, storms, or altitude sickness. But what he recorded, none of his gear prepared him for that. The footage begins normal, blue sky, thin wisps of cloud. He narrates casually, occasionally laughing at his own jokes. You can hear the crunch of ice beneath his crampons. He pans his camera to the ridgeline, describing the wind conditions, joking about being the only madman left alive up here. Then, around the 4:14 mark, the camera jerks suddenly. He stops moving. He whispers something you can barely make out over the wind. Did someone just? He doesn't finish. The camera tilts. Shaky zoom on a ridge about 50 meters away. You can't make out much. Just a shape. A long, thin shape. Not walking, standing, no jacket, no gear, just pale against the snow. Facing away, completely still. He mumbles, "Who the hell is that?" And that's when it happens. The wind stops, like someone sucked the sound out of the world. You hear Arjun's breath catch in his throat. His next whisper is soft, clipped. It turned around. Then static. The GoPro keeps recording, but no voice. Just heavy wind returning, violently this time, blowing snow, visibility gone. For the next 30 seconds. All you see is motion, Arjun stumbling, running, his breathing ragged, like he's crying and hyperventilating at the same time. He screams something unintelligible. The camera lens cracks, not shatters. Just fractures diagonally, as if pinched from both sides. And then, it falls. The final frame, upside down, sky above, boots below, and far off, closer now, a sliver of white. A movement that's too fast for something standing still. The video ends with a single, low tone, almost like a sigh, almost like a sob. The GoPro was recovered a week later by a separate climbing team. No trace of Arjun, no blood, no belongings. Just a journal page shoved into a crevice near the ridge, tucked behind a loose rock. The words, scrawled over and over again in shaking pen. "I looked. I'm sorry, I looked." The Foundation classified the footage within hours. But the mountain rescue team, they saw the clip. 2 of them later requested psychological reassignment. One went completely off-grid, deleting all digital traces of himself. The only thing he left was a voicemail to his sister. "He didn't chase me. He didn't have to. I saw it once. That's enough. It already knows where I live." Fringe theorists claim the mountain's thin atmosphere weakens 96's spatial perception, buying you a few extra seconds. But no one has tested it. For obvious reasons. The theories die with their authors. Historians still argue whether this was a confirmed 096 encounter or a copycat anomaly. But the detail that makes you pause, what chills you most, is Arjun's voice when he says, "It turned around." Because think about it, 96's trigger isn't hearing. It isn't smell or proximity. It's the face. Which means, for Arjun to say that, He saw it. He saw the face. And what's worse, you just imagined it. Didn't you? You pictured the shape, the turn, the face. You thought about what it must have looked like. And in the silence after, as your mind played out what happened next, you may have stepped over that invisible line without even realizing. And now you wait. You're not supposed to find it in a box of children's drawings. But that's exactly where it turns up, a stick figure, scrawled in crayon, standing alone in the corner of a wrinkled sheet. No eyes, no face, just an oval head filled in with rough, black strokes, arms too long, hands dragging on the ground. And underneath it, in red, he screams when you see him. The drawing came from the basement of a long-shuttered orphanage in Pennsylvania. Abandoned since the late 90s. Reclaimed by moss, rot, and teenage dares. A group of urban explorers found the sketchbooks in a locked filing cabinet labeled Art Therapy 1996. Water damaged, mostly harmless, finger paintings, stick families, dinosaurs, until they reached the final folder. 27 drawings, all the same figure. The children had given it names: Tall Sad, Crying Boy, Mr. Hurt, and across several pages, the phrase, "Don't make him turn around," appears again and again. Written in different colors, different childlike handwriting. Some letters are reversed, others written in shaky, terrified slants. But the weirdest part, every single drawing avoids showing his face. Even 6-year-olds obeyed the rule. You look closer at one in particular, page 17. A stick figure child is drawn looking at the pale man. Arrows point from his eyes to the blank face. And beside them, a massive red scribble, violently applied. Underneath, in shaky pencil, he scream and scream and scream and scream and scream, repeating until the pencil breaks. You sit back, deeply unsettled. You're no stranger to creepypasta art or fabricated urban legends. But this is different. Because these drawings are dated June 3, 1996. And that same week, the orphanage logs showed 2 children disappeared. Not runaways, vanished. No broken windows, no forced entry, just 2 beds empty in the morning, sheets still warm, and a trail of wet footprints leading to the playroom door. The Foundation got involved later, too late. The site was sealed, reclassified, and used for unrelated experiments. But rumors persisted among field agents. They said the art therapy wing whispers at night. They said you can hear crying if you press your ear to the cracked chalkboard. They said one of the therapists went missing too, last seen looking through the folder you're now examining. Historians still argue whether children can even activate SCP-096's response. There's no consensus. Some claim the face must be intellectually processed to trigger the effect. Others believe the effect begins the moment any conscious being acknowledges the image. Which would make this folder, these sketches, potentially the most dangerous artwork ever made. There's one final page that truly freezes your blood. It's a group picture, 5 stick children, a tree, a dog, and in the far back corner, small, half-finished, is a pale figure kneeling, hands over its face. But the part that makes your heart stop, someone has drawn a red circle around it in ballpoint pen, an adult's handwriting, and next to the circle, this one didn't sleep for 3 nights. Woke up screaming, said it was still outside the window. The drawing is dated June 2. You flip the paper over. A smudged note. Please shred these pages. He doesn't like being remembered. Too late. You already saw them, and so did your brain. And somewhere, out in the dark, he knows. You dive into the forums. Not Reddit. Not anymore. That place has been scrubbed clean. No. You go deeper. Web archives. Invite-only threads. Closed message boards with usernames like Shatter Echo and 0B Server D3 Ad. You're looking for patterns, cases, whispers, sightings. But what you find is a war. A war between 2 camps. Debunkers versus believers. On one side, the skeptics. The rationalists. The "it's just a creepypasta" crowd. They post grainy screenshots, overlay grids, point out how the lighting doesn't match, how SCP-096 violates physics. How the Foundation is a fictional wiki. For crying out loud. On the other side, silence. Mostly, the believers don't argue, they just post links to corrupted videos, names of hikers gone missing under inexplicable circumstances, images with faces blurred, not by editing software, but by something else, anomalies that no algorithm can account for. But sometimes, someone crosses the line. One user, DocCoil92, posts a 7-part series called The Blur Between Stories and Signals. He walks through several known SCP-096 incident zones, cross-referencing Foundation leaks, missing person databases, even public weather logs. He pinpoints at least 9 events between 2004 and 2018 where the environmental conditions match exactly, including sudden wind silence, unexplained temperature drops, and localized electromagnetic distortions. He ends with a thesis that shakes you. If SCP-096 doesn't exist, something exactly like it does. And it's using the story as camouflage. The thread was up for less than 72 hours before the entire forum was shut down. Gone, wiped, even Wayback Machine entries scrubbed, a rare thing. You read the cached replies. One person says, "If we keep calling it fiction, it gets to move freely." Another, more cryptic, "The story is the blindfold. That's why we keep it alive." Historians still argue whether the rise of creepypasta was just an internet phase or a psychological pressure valve, a way to talk about real things in safe ways. You started to suspect the latter. Maybe 096 was never meant to be believed. Maybe belief was the only thing that kept it at bay. Then you find something else. A video, long removed, but discussed enough that fragments remain. Titled, "He Wasn't in the Shot Before." A group of teenagers filming a low-budget horror short in the woods outside Vancouver. One of them, according to old posts, was obsessed with SCPs. They decided to throw in a "shy guy" scene. Just for fun, they shot it, laughed about it, uploaded a teaser to Instagram. That night, one of them went missing. By morning, 2 more were gone. The remaining survivor, hospitalized, unresponsive, fingers broken, not smashed, but twisted back, like he tried to cover his eyes too late. Only one sentence was recorded from him during a moment of lucidity. He wasn't in the shot before, but he's in it now. The footage was deleted, but has still survived, and when you finally track it down, an old WebP buried in a Discord archive, it's just as unsettling as you feared. 4 kids standing in a clearing, laughing, flashlight glow. And there, in the far background, between the trees, something tall, slumped forward, arms dragging, head turned just enough that you almost see the face. Almost. You scroll past the image. Quickly, but your brain holds onto it longer than you'd like. And just for a second. You wonder, did you see enough? You open the logs. This is where it begins to feel real. Not stories, not sightings, but the D-class reports, raw. Clinical, terrifying in their simplicity. D9143. Male, 34, former IT technician, selected for a visual contact experiment with SCP-096. The setup was carefully controlled, a sealed room, remote viewing through an automated projector system. The image of SCP-96's face, captured from a corrupted satellite photo, was placed on a screen. He didn't even know what he was looking at. The file notes it clearly. 0 hours 0 minutes and 13 seconds. D9143 appears confused. No verbal response. 0 hours 0 minutes and 20 seconds begins rubbing eyes. Requests water. 0 hours 0 minutes and 28 seconds pauses mid-sentence. Turns his head. I think I just saw. 0 hours 0 minutes and 29 seconds, data lost. 0 hours 0 minutes and 33 seconds, external containment alarms activate. SCP-096 breached its holding cell 9 seconds later. Now remember, this was a sealed, underground facility, 10-inch steel walls, no visible pathway from SCP-96's location to the observation chamber. And yet, 0 hours 1 minute and 2 seconds security footage redacts itself. File replaced by static. 0 hours 1 minute and 8 seconds screaming begins. 0 hours 1 minute and 14 seconds D9143 terminated. Autopsy inconclusive. 0 hours 2 minutes and 27 seconds SCP-096 returns to sitting posture. Silent. Unharmed. No firepower was used. No resistance needed. The act was inevitable. Historians still argue whether 096 chooses the method of termination or if it's some automatic, instinctual mechanism, like an emotional spike causing a dimensional event. But every case ends the same, not just death. Erasure, not just of the body, but of the moment itself. The logs don't lie, and D9143 wasn't the only one. There was D1448. Who viewed SCP-96's face by accident while assembling documents. The file was mislabeled. No warning. He said, "This guy looks weird." And then the recording cut out. The on-site guards died with him. So did the senior researcher, the custodian 2 floors down, and even the technician who remotely opened the file. All of them were determined to have glimpsed the image. Not stared, not even clearly, just noticed. The Foundation scrambled. Emergency protocols updated again. Now all known SCP-096 images are buried in visual encryption. Redacted frames. Distortion overlays. You need retinal access and a sealed Faraday vault just to open one. But the question still lingers. Why did the creature stop after those victims? Why not continue? If it's enraged by being seen, why doesn't it obliterate every recording? Every memory? You flip to the most chilling case of all. D2009. Unlike the others, he didn't panic. He looked at the photo, paused, then smiled. "That's it?" he asked. "That's all the fuss is about?" He was dead 43 seconds later. But not before saying this. "He's crying." Why is he crying? No one else reported hearing sobs. But audio logs confirm it. A low, distant whimper, growing louder, then impact, then silence. Researchers speculated for months. One even suggested that SCP-096 is aware of each person's reaction to its face. That humiliation, not hatred, fuels the breach. One woman, unnamed in the file, proposed this terrifying thought during her resignation interview. What if we're not triggering it? What if it's asking us something, and we keep answering wrong? You close the logs. They're all dead now. Some never even looked at the image directly. A reflection, a shadow, a sketch. And that's what really keeps you awake. Not the creature, but the rule. The rule doesn't care what you meant to see. It only cares that you did. You study the aftermath photos. There's no blood. That's the part that always throws people off. They expect carnage, bones snapped, skin shredded, body parts flung like horror movie props. But when SCP-096 finishes its pursuit, what's left behind barely qualifies as remains. You flip through the file from the Nevada breach, incident code 096 Black Sierra. The site had been specifically built for low-risk containment. Reinforced walls, bio-containment fields, even a 2-door fail-safe. SCP-096 was transferred there temporarily while Site-19 underwent structural repairs. It lasted 3 days. The breach began after a malfunction in the internal server array, which accidentally displayed a cached image of 96's face on one of the rotating monitors in the break room. No one knows how it got there, but a junior tech named Ben Rowley saw it during lunch. He laughed. "Ugly Photoshop fail," he said out loud, still chewing his sandwich. 37 seconds later, the internal cameras caught movement in 96's chamber, just a twitch. A tilt of the head. It stood up, slowly, like waking from a fever dream. The room's ambient temperature dropped by 4 degrees. Then, impact. What happened next took 12 seconds. The outer walls bent outward, not in. Out, as if something imploded in reverse. Metal curled like wrapping paper. Air pressure snapped. And then 096 was moving. Not running, not teleporting, just moving in a way the human brain wasn't meant to understand. Every camera trying to track it failed. Almost like reality itself was pulling its gaze away. And then, silence. When the rapid response team arrived, they found the break room. The floor was scraped, not cracked, not bloodied, just scraped, like something had dragged nothing across it. Chairs overturned, one shoe, half a sandwich, and near the center of the room, a stain, not red, gray, almost as if the body had been compacted and pressed into a single dense smear. Forensics called it biological fog. But the detail that stuck with you, more than anything, was the window. Perfectly intact, except for one long, vertical fracture through the center. When the glass was analyzed, microscopic residue was found embedded in the crack. Organic, part calcium, part keratin. One fragment was identified as a molar, compressed flat like a coin. Historians still argue whether SCP-096 consciously destroys its victims or if it's the byproduct of some space-time distortion effect. One theory suggests 096 doesn't actually touch its targets, it collapses them. Compresses the probability of their existence into a single, catastrophic moment. Think of it like trying to fit a cathedral into a shoebox without changing the building. And then there's the smell. Witnesses report that the air left behind always has the same odor, ozone, copper, and something faintly like wet wool. One guard, only identified as Sergio M., described it like this. It smelled like lightning, like static and shame, like the room felt sorry for itself. But perhaps the most unsettling part. The creature cries afterward. Always. Low, hitching sobs. Like a child who broke something and doesn't know how to fix it. You'll hear it from down the hall, through concrete walls, through lead shielding. That sound, less animal than human. Raw, miserable. You think about the word shy. It doesn't fit anymore. This isn't stage fright. It's something deeper, existential. Like this thing is ashamed of being seen. Like your gaze forces it to be real, and it hates you for making it remember that it exists. But even in that hate, there's grief. You can't unhear the crying once you've listened to it. It sticks in your ribs, your dreams, your heartbeat. There's a reason the Foundation stopped using human observers. Why they moved to machine learning visual filters and neural block face recognition tech. Because every time someone sees the face, someone dies. Sometimes not just one person. Sometimes a dozen. Sometimes 100. And every time, no blood, just the sound of something that doesn't want to be here, being forced to exist. Because you looked, you find the journal by accident. It wasn't tagged correctly, buried in a random archive from Site 063. Labeled, Facility Maintenance Log, Janitorial. You almost skipped it, assuming it was nothing but mop schedules and chemical inventories. But then, halfway down the page, an entry caught your eye. Dated July 12, 2008. Heard something behind me again. Soft steps. I was alone on the floor. Though, figured it was echo at first, but the sound moved with me. You pause. Scroll up. The file belonged to Julian McClary, a custodial contractor assigned to rotate between safe and Euclid-class containment wings. Not a Foundation scientist, not a security officer, just a guy with a mop, keys, and the bad luck of having the night shift 3 times a week. His entries begin ordinary: dust complaints, overflowed toilets, gripes about vending machines not being restocked. But then, things change. That one cell always makes me uneasy. The door's sealed, but I keep catching my reflection in it, and it doesn't always line up. You check the schedule logs from that year. Cell 096B was undergoing its first spatial resonance calibration tests. The cell was double-layered. All internal cameras disabled, with only proximity motion sensors active. No windows, no mirrors, no reflective surfaces. Except Julian's mop bucket. Swear I saw something standing just behind me in the mop water. Not for long, just a flash, like a bone-colored scarecrow hunched over. You reread that line, not because it's graphic, but because it's so casual. This wasn't a man trying to write a ghost story. He wasn't even trying to report anything. He was just tired, and maybe too honest on paper. Historians still argue whether SCP-096 can trigger from indirect reflections, especially warped ones, like puddles or convex surfaces. The containment protocols say no, but some researchers are less certain. One even proposed that the face trigger doesn't require visual detail, only cognitive acknowledgement. If your brain registers, this is a face. Even imperfectly, the countdown begins. Julian's logs continue. I started working faster. That hallway gives me headaches now. Sound always seems muffled, like it's not coming from the right direction. He notes random puddles appearing near the sealed door, drips from pipes that weren't leaking. The feeling of being watched, even in absolute silence. And then, this entry. Heard crying last night. Real soft. Not near, not far, just there. Almost thought it was one of the techs. But when I checked the hallway, lights started flickering. The door stayed closed. I didn't check again. You lean back. This man, unarmed, untrained, just there to mop floors, was standing within meters of SCP-096. Repeatedly, for weeks, and yet, nothing happened. Why? You flip to his final entry. It's only 2 sentences long. Dated July 22. I think he knows I don't want to look. He's lonelier than they realize. The next day, Julian submitted a resignation request and left the Foundation. No confrontation, no incident, just one man deciding he'd had enough of walking past something that shouldn't be real. He died in 2016. Natural causes. Peacefully, in his sleep. The obituary doesn't mention his time at Site-063. Just that he loved jazz, antique radios, and used to whistle while mopping. You wonder if 096 ever remembered him. If it ever waited by the door again, listening for the sound of a mop bucket rolling across linoleum, crying not from rage or shame, but because no one was there to look away anymore. The video opens with a blur. It's handheld, low light, probably shot on a phone with a cracked lens. You hear wind, the crunch of leaves, some teenage laughter, a whispered, "Did you hear that?" And then, static. This is Anomaly 2, the static trail video. It was uploaded briefly to an obscure cryptid tracking blog in early 2019. The description claimed it was just a spooky walk in Oregon. Nothing more, but people who saw it early remember something else. Something wrong, not in what they saw, but in what they felt. You play it again, frame by frame. At second 7, the camera jitters. Someone gasps. There's movement in the trees. Not visible, just felt. Branches swaying too gently. The wind moving in a circle. Not a line. Then a moment of silence. Then comes the static. But not from the mic. From the forest. A soft, crackling fizz begins to fill the air. Like a TV that's lost signal but won't admit it. And underneath that, a low, dry exhale. You lean closer, trying to pass it. At second 16, the audio spikes briefly, 3 whispered words. Reversed. Slurred. You isolate the sound, flip it forward. He sees me. Your skin tightens. The static grows louder. The teens whisper nervously, laughing still, but you can hear it, forced. You know the sound of people trying not to admit they're scared. The flashlight flicks left, right. Someone says, "Cut it, man," but the camera stays on. And then it pans to a narrow trail between 2 trees. Something's standing there, not clearly, just outlined in the darkness. Tall, slouched, arms almost touching the ground. No face visible, but the way the shadows bend around it, not natural. Like the forest doesn't want you to see. Like reality itself is flinching. The camera dips, breath quickens, and then a sound. A click, like bone under pressure. Then a scream, not from the creature, but the person holding the phone. Cut to black. A single frame lingers for half a second longer than it should. An image that, when analyzed, revealed a ghost of a face. Distorted, teeth too long, no eyes, but not blurred, smudged, like someone had tried to erase it manually, and failed. You scroll through archived comments before the post was removed. They're all over the place. I watched it and threw up after. Is that normal? There's a frame where it looks like he's reaching toward the lens. If you reverse the static, you can hear sobbing, real slow. Historians still argue whether this is actual SCP-096 footage. No Foundation tag, no official termination, but then again, not all encounters end. Some just linger, and that's the most disturbing part. Because the guy who posted the video, he went quiet 3 days later. His final post was short. No punctuation. If he's just lonely, why does it feel like he's behind me when I close my eyes? No one's heard from him since. But the file remains. You've got a copy, and every time you play it, just for a second, you think you hear something new in the static. Like a whisper closer than before. You close the laptop and stare at the ceiling. But you're not resting. Your mind keeps going back to a place you've never been, Cradle Mountain, in Tasmania. The name sounds peaceful, soothing, even like a lullaby, but in the SCP files, it's listed under potential containment site breach. Unverified, tier red. No assigned SCP. No field team notes. Just a 2-line summary. 3 campers missing. 1 body recovered. 1 tape found. Subject expired due to internal compression and facial trauma consistent with rapid displacement. You know what that means. 096. The tape starts with soft birdsong. Light breeze. It's morning. A GoPro mounted on a backpack records 2 men setting up a portable burner. Laughing, cracking open powdered eggs. There's no hint of dread. Until around the 8-minute mark. Hey, you hear that? The other camper shushes him. The birds are gone. And in their place, nothing. Not silence. Not natural quiet. An absence. A stillness so deep it feels like the world is holding its breath. You know this pattern. You've seen it in other logs. SCP-096 doesn't bring storms. It brings stagnation, still air, still trees, the calm before a grief-stricken detonation. At 8:42, the audio glitches, not in the digital sense, in the world itself. Like the camera briefly stopped working and then remembered it was alive. Then a voice. Faint, hoarse. I think there's someone in the water. You watch as one camper walks toward the lake's edge. Barely visible through the thick gum trees. The camera zooms automatically, trying to focus, but what it catches is a shape. Just a glimpse. Just a sliver of white rising from the water. Like a knee, maybe a shoulder. Too smooth, too long. It doesn't move, but it's there. Then the camper steps forward. Squinting. Are you okay down there? That's where it cuts. The next 10 minutes of footage are corrupted. When the feed returns, the camera's been dropped. Sideways. You hear wet footsteps. One scream. And then nothing but soft crying, thin. Childlike. Almost apologetic. You never see the face. But it doesn't matter. Because the one body they recovered. It wasn't torn. It wasn't mangled. It was folded. Like a lawn chair snapped shut. Everything compacted into a human shape barely 3 feet long. And the tape, still playing, still recording the windless lake. The Foundation sealed the mountain after that. Unstable rock conditions, they said. Tourist access restricted indefinitely, but people still go, some to hike, others to test the story. One left a review on a now archived travel site. The trail was beautiful, but I kept thinking I saw someone kneeling by the water. When I looked, it was just a rock. Still, it felt like it had been something else the second before. Historians still argue whether the lake was a nesting ground, or if SCP-096 had simply fled there after another breach. But some insist it's still there, crouched in the shallows, eyes covered, weeping into the cold, waiting for one more glance, one more set of eyes, one more reason to scream. You didn't mean to find it. You were researching something else entirely, facial recognition algorithms, blurry photo reconstructions, the usual rabbit hole, but then you stumbled onto a thread in a defunct AI developer forum. Topic: The face glitch files. At first glance, it sounds like typical nerd chatter, bugs in machine learning datasets. corrupted training models, facial data going haywire. But the deeper you scroll, the stranger it gets. Users begin reporting incidents of their programs refusing to recognize certain images. Not crashing, not freezing, just stopping. One post stands out. Ran a batch through OpenCV to blur all human faces. 999 succeeded. One file returned null, but the image had a face. Not clear, just enough. After that, the program started stuttering. Then my GPU overheated. Never happened before. You track down the image in question. It's ordinary at first, group photo at a convention. 5 people smiling. All faces visible, except one. Back left corner. A tall figure, hunched, almost outside the frame. Just the faintest outline of a head. Barely visible, like someone drew it with an old eraser. You can't see the face. But you know there's a face. You enhance the image. Big mistake. Your software freezes, not just that tab, but your entire system. The fan kicks in hard. Your mouse flickers, and for just a moment, your monitor blacks out. When it comes back, the image is gone. No crash, just gone. You check your folders. Corrupted. Your reflection in the screen looks a little too still. And then you remember a phrase from a white paper you read a few months ago. Something about how neural networks mimic the brain. That when they fail to read a face, it's not because it isn't there, it's because something inside them chooses not to comprehend it. Historians still argue whether the face of SCP-096 operates on a visual spectrum at all. Some think it exists only in cognition, a meme, a psychic virus, or a trigger embedded in evolutionary fear responses. One psychologist put it best. Your brain doesn't know what it's looking at. It only knows that it must not look. Some researchers tried to bypass this. They designed mirror-encoded relays, devices that would only show a face through triple reflected imagery. In every test, the face still triggered the effect. The only attempt that came close to success. A deepfake algorithm trained to deconstruct 96's face in reverse, like peeling a digital mask layer by layer. It was meant to remove the trigger point. It worked once. The second time, the computer began recreating the face on its own. Without prompt, without source input. A staff member stared at the test monitor for exactly 1.6 seconds before collapsing. Her final words were simple. It smiled. The experiment was shut down. The AI quarantined. The research team reassigned, if they survived. But traces of the glitch files remain. Shared quietly, through closed groups. Whispered warnings. Never feed the image a face. Never look at frame 74. The glitch isn't in the software. It's in us. You sit back and breathe. Your software is still running. But now you wonder, how many times has your brain filled in a face that wasn't fully there? How many shadows did you give features, just to make sense of the blur? And did he notice? Because if SCP-096 is out there, lurking in corrupted files, in blurred corners of group photos, in machine-learned reconstructions, then maybe every time we try to understand, we're drawing his face a little clearer. You've heard helicopter rotors beat like a heart before, but never like this. Not in his story. You press play on a classified field interview, recorded off the record, passed around through ghost USBs and encrypted channels. The man calls himself Casey. No last name. Voice aged but crisp, gravelly in a way that only comes from flying for decades without enough sleep. Former military. Recruited for Foundation operations sometime in the mid-2000s. The mission? Simple. Aerial recon over Area X. No confirmation what they were looking for. No eyes on 096. Just heat signatures. Unusual motion patterns. Unmarked footprints at 11.00 feet. He wasn't told what SCP-096 was. Only that they were not to look down. That's what bugged me, Casey says. Calm. We were flying low. Night vision on. And the commander just says, keep your eyes forward. No glances. Not even a peek. You tell that to soldiers. They start wondering what's down there. They never made it to the third grid line. He remembers a sudden dead zone. The HUD blanked. The infrared feed showed only white static. But no mechanical failure. Not a tech issue, something else. His co-pilot muttered, "It's cold down there. Why is it so cold?" The sensors read -23°C in desert air. Then the wind stopped. Not slowed, stopped. That's when I realized the crew had gone quiet. All of them, 4 guys. No breathing, no movement. Casey looked right. His co-pilot's eyes were wide, fixed forward, but tears were streaming down his face. He saw it, Casey says. I didn't know how. The windows were blacked out with reflectives. But something got in. Maybe not the image, maybe the idea. Then, the scream. Not from the helicopter, not from the comms, from outside. A sound like grief detonated, raw and jagged, tearing across frequencies like broken radio transmissions. Something ancient, something full of pain. Casey swears the helicopter shuddered. Not from turbulence, from pressure, as if the air was bending inward. He panicked, tilted the bird up, pulled out of the grid line. Then, I blinked. Next thing I know, I'm 70 miles east with 2 engines down. Half my crew gone, and the rest, broken. One guy wouldn't stop weeping. The other tried to claw his own eyes out. Historians still argue whether Area X was an actual 096 breach site. The Foundation's logs never officially connected the two. But Casey is certain. He goes silent for several beats on the tape. Then he says, "We were supposed to drop a beacon. I left it on, still running. For all I know." You freeze the recording. A beacon? You dig deeper, trace the archived black box transmission logs. There's a shortwave signal still looping out of a dead zone near the coordinates Casey flew through. It broadcasts one thing every hour. No eyes, no eyes, no eyes. Do not see him. It's been doing that for 11 years. You try to imagine it. A creature who doesn't want to be seen. Who falls apart under the weight of your gaze, but becomes unstoppable the moment it's exposed. A paradox made flesh. And you realize, as Casey did midair, the real weapon isn't claws or speed or sound. It's shame, embodied, amplified, turned lethal. And the moment you recognize the face, he knows where to find you. You scroll past the redacted footage and land on a file with no name, just a timestamp. 5 hours 47 minutes and 12 seconds. The 5-second delay theory. It started as a tech memo, something only a few Foundation engineers saw. A bug report, then someone leaked it to a fringe database, where it became a quiet obsession. You're not the first to study it. But the deeper you go, the more you understand why people refuse to talk about it out loud. Because this isn't about an encounter with SCP-096. It's about when the encounter reaches you. Here's how it started. In 2017, an experimental field outpost, Site Delta R, was testing a latency-buffered camera network. Think time-delayed visuals, designed to show images 5 seconds behind real time. The theory: if someone accidentally sees SCP-096's face on a screen, they'd have those precious seconds to look away before the signal became real to the brain. A delay, not a shield. They called it Project Mirror Fall. The test involved a secure chamber, a pre-recorded SCP-096 image, and a D-class subject seated at a control terminal. The plan? Have him look directly at the image as it appeared, and see whether the delay could interrupt the cognitive trigger. At 5 hours 47 minutes and 12 seconds, the image appeared on screen. At 5 hours 47 minutes and 13 seconds, the subject laughed. "This is what you guys are scared of." At 5 hours 47 minutes and 14 seconds, the camera behind him caught the moment he blinked. At 5 hours 47 minutes and 15 seconds, the lights flickered. At 5 hours 47 minutes and 16 seconds, the ceiling cracked. By 5 hours 47 minutes and 17 seconds, there was nothing left but static. The 5 seconds had expired. SCP-096 arrived on time. But here's where the theory comes in. Security personnel, watching through a separate feed, saw nothing. Not the image, not the breach, just the subject laughing, then vanishing. The entire sequence played out like a skip in reality. A moment cut and removed. And when they reviewed the footage, the timestamp flickered between 5 hours 47 minutes and 12 seconds and 5 hours 47 minutes and 17 seconds, looping. Never stabilizing. Historians still argue whether 096 exists entirely within our timeline, or if it phases across dimensions when triggered. Some researchers believe it enters the delay, not the present, that it doesn't chase in the way you or I would. It simply arrives at the point of causality and tears the thread from inside out. The report includes this line: "The 5 seconds don't save you. They just make you watch yourself die before it happens." After the incident, Project Mirrorfall was scrapped. All remaining delay cameras dismantled. And yet, the theory persists. SCP-096 doesn't respond to images. It responds to intent. The moment you begin to see his face, even if the full image hasn't yet arrived, you're already dead. The delay isn't protection, it's just the time he needs to find the version of you that knows. You lean back, heart racing, because how many seconds ago did you see something you weren't supposed to? How many frames ago did your brain start filling in the shape? What if 096 has already located the you that knows? And this you is just waiting to catch up. You stare at the screen. It's paused, frozen at 5 hours 47 minutes and 12 seconds. But something in the shadows looks closer than before. You shouldn't be here. Not on this trail. Not alone. Not in this part of the forest where GPS falters. Where birds don't sing. Where the trees feel like they're listening. But here you are, flipping through an old ranger report labeled Unusual Floor Pattern, Restricted Path Number 6. A forgotten file from Yellowstone's outer perimeter. Mid-autumn, dry air, perfect visibility. The ranger, only listed as EG, was inspecting after reports of campers getting weird vibes near the old quarry trail. What he found was off. At first I thought it was kids playing with sticks. He wrote. Then I realized the layout was too symmetrical. Too perfect, like someone placed each twig. You scroll down and see the photos. A mosaic, laid across 20 feet of forest floor. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of small, dried twigs arranged into the shape of a humanoid figure. Spindly arms, bent legs, a circle for the head. No face, but where the face should be. The twigs spiral inward, tighter and tighter, like someone tried to make an absence with geometry. Then you read the next line. Knees bent, arms long, head tilted, looks like it's sobbing. You pause. It's almost identical to a known pose in SCP-096's reaction state. The fetal crouch, the pre-breach quiver, the ashamed collapse, as one researcher once called it. But this is art, not damage, not residue, an offering. Ranger EG swept the area, looking for signs of wildlife interference. Nothing, no paw prints, no claw marks, just those twigs, set like bones in a forgotten grave. The soil around the figure was undisturbed, completely flat, like no one ever stepped there. Then, 5 feet to the side, he found the stone ring. 12 rocks, carefully spaced. Inside, a single handprint, pressed deep into the moss. Not adult-sized, not child-sized, something in between. Fingers too long, palm too narrow. The ranger wrote, I didn't touch it, I don't know why, it just felt like, if I moved one stone, something would wake up. Historians still argue whether this scene represents SCP-096's presence, or if it's something older, maybe even a cultural echo of its existence. After all, cave paintings in France show a similar figure, arms dragging, face scratched out with red ochre, and Australian petroglyphs. They call it the mourner in white. Could it be that humanity's known about him longer than we admit? Or is 096 leaving these patterns itself, crying through art, trying to express the horror it's trapped inside? The ranger left that trail. He submitted a partial report, called in fatigue, and went off-grid 2 months later. Never seen again, but his last radio log, recorded accidentally while shutting down his comms, captured a strange sound just before static took over. A soft voice, not pleading, just, Tired. I didn't ask to be seen. You close the file. The photo's still on your screen. That stick figure. Kneeling. Not angry. Just waiting for someone to look. The livestream starts like any other. A hiker named Nico Vids, popular for his solo treks into unmarked trails, is broadcasting from a dense forest somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. The sun's going down, his camera battery's at 38%, and his breath is visible in the air, early autumn chill. Chat's lively, emojis flying, everything's normal, for the first 12 minutes. Then it changes. This is Anomaly 3, livestream gone wrong. At 12:14, Nico turns his camera toward a clearing, adjusting the tripod. I heard something over there, he says casually, probably deer. He zooms in, nothing, just trees. At 12:38, someone in chat posts, was that a person? A few more repeat it. Back left, someone moved. Dude, something's watching you. Nico laughs it off. You're trying to scare me. Huh? He turns back to his fire pit. But the camera, left running, shifts slightly. Not because of wind, because something stepped past it. Not visible, just motion, a blur, a long shadow without a source. The chat freezes, then explodes. Bro, what was that? Is this a prank? Why is the fire going out? At 13:02, the ambient audio picks up a clicking noise. Not an animal, not a branch, something between a jaw crack and a dislocated sob. Nico hears it too. You see him pause mid-sentence. Okay, no joke, that wasn't a bird. At 13:09, the camera glitches. Just once. A single digital artifact. A horizontal slice of the frame tears and slides out of sync. It's subtle, but wrong, like reality hiccuped. And for one frame, there's something in the clearing. Tall, pale, head tilted, arms too long, knees inward, no face visible, but the outlines unmistakable. The stream lags. Viewers scream in chat. Don't look back, run. It's him. It's him. Then, silence. Nico stands still. The fire flares once, then collapses. His breathing is fast, sharp. He starts walking backward, whispering, "No, no way. It's real." The chat goes black. Literally, one by one. Usernames vanish. Then the video pixelates. Viewers reported losing signal, even having their browsers crash entirely. Some said their phones shut down. Others just never came back online. You track down a few of those usernames. One belonged to a guy named Ethan, college student, physics major, known to binge cryptid streams. His Discord logs stopped that night. Last message he sent, "I think I saw its face by accident." Historians still argue whether this was a true SCP-096 breach or a deeply clever ARG. But the original livestream archive is gone. Deleted from YouTube, scrubbed from Twitch. Even the re-uploads are blank, no video. Just 58 minutes of static. Except one. A Redditor named VidMoth managed to salvage a 4-second clip. You've watched it too many times. Paused, enhanced, brightened. The frame is so degraded it's impossible to see detail, but something is there. In the background, beyond Nico's shoulder, a face. Blurry, asymmetrical, too small for the skull. But it's there. And when you zoom in, you don't see pixels. You see teeth. And now, your screen just flickered. Twice. No notification, no error. Just flicker. You wonder if that was enough. If 4 seconds of corrupted footage, reconstructed in your mind, counted. If you just recognized a face your eyes didn't fully see. But your brain did. You bring up the map. Not the official one. The sanitized Foundation overlay with redacted zones and outdated coordinates. No, this one's crowdsourced, pulled together by amateur sleuths, horror bloggers, and a few insiders too burned out or too reckless to stay silent. The file is called shyguy_sightings_heatmap_v6.kml. At first, it looks random, red dots scattered across continents. Alaska, Mongolia, the French Alps, a few in places that don't even have names, just grid references and whispers. But then the pattern starts to emerge. SCP-096 sightings leave a ring. Not a physical one, a digital one. Forum threads spike. Ghost accounts appear and disappear. Reddit bans a wave of cryptid-related posts. Even Google Earth caches glitch out briefly. You notice that every confirmed incident is followed by data collapse in a 50-mile radius. Cell towers misreport location pings. Camera metadata scrambles. People forget what day it is. You zoom in on one cluster in particular, Central Asia. Near the Kazakh steppe. 4 missing hikers in 2015. 2 separate incidents of facial mutilation on wildlife. And a GPS relay that pinged itself 4 minutes before it was activated. But here's what really makes you lean in. One location repeats. Over and over. Slightly different coordinates. Slightly different times. But always the same zone. Northern Siberia. Just above a frozen lake known locally as the Eye That Sleeps. According to folklore, the lake was cursed. No reflection ever appears on its surface. No birds fly over it. No bugs live near it. And every 7 or 8 years, someone vanishes near its shore, always described beforehand as quiet, lonely, hard to look at. Historians still argue whether that zone represents SCP-096's resting point, or simply a place it returns to, a spot it considers home. Because here's the thing, 096 doesn't move unless it's seen. If it's not being seen, it waits, alone, in the dark, knees pulled up, weeping. There are foundation theories that it goes dormant between triggers. That it doesn't wander, it sits, always in the same position, hands over its face, as if trying to undo the very idea of itself. Like a statue nobody was meant to carve. And maybe that's why this one area lights up again and again. Because people keep looking, not at the lake, but for the truth. They dig too deep, reconstruct corrupted images, write stories, share maps. People like you. People who want to believe that if we just understand the pattern, we can predict it, avoid it, contain it. But here's the truth. SCP-096's map doesn't care where it is. It only cares where you are. Because wherever you are when you see the face, that's the new epicenter. That's ground zero. And now you're wondering if this map you've been staring at, zoomed in, enhanced, detail after detail, might have included a photo. Even a sliver, even a face. You scroll back through the files. Your screen blinks once, then again. You lean closer, and for a brief moment, you're not sure if you're looking at the map, or if something on the map is looking back at you. The message was short. 6 words. Transmitted once. Logged, and never repeated. Do not look at him. No location signature. No broadcast ID. Just those 6 words. Captured at exactly 12:03 a.m. local time at a remote Antarctic research outpost, Station Calypso. Positioned roughly 12 kilometers from the southern ice shelf. A station manned by 4 people at the time, none of whom remember sending it. You dig through the station's open logs. The night of the transmission, all 4 personnel logged perfectly normal activity. Lab samples, sleep schedules, battery charging. But one odd note stands out from Dr. Lena Hart's handwritten shift journal. Woke up at 12:05. Dreamed I was underground. In a long hallway. Something was crying. The hallway had no end. That's not the kind of dream you expect from someone who studies climate drift models. You pull up the weather records for that night. Conditions, stable. No solar interference. But here's where it gets strange. At exactly 0:03, the moment of the transmission, all equipment monitoring ambient sound inside the station flatlined. Not, went quiet. Flatlined. Decibel readers showed 0 movement. No wind. No electric hum. Not even footsteps. And then, for a full 2 minutes, every internal camera recorded the same error code. Error. Face value exceeds threshold. This wasn't a software bug. That code doesn't exist in any known firmware. And yet, it appeared on all 5 devices. Then vanished. You trace the origin of the message. It didn't come from a console. It came from a handheld radio left in storage, a backup unit no one had touched in years. Its battery was dead. disconnected, wrapped in foil, a superstition among certain Foundation engineers. They called it a signal sink, a place where bad ideas go to sleep. Historians still argue whether the Antarctic incident was an actual SCP-096 encounter, or if something echoed across frequencies from somewhere else. But one theory, posted briefly on a now-defunct signal interpretation forum, suggests 096 may not just react to being seen. It may react to being remembered. There's evidence, scattered, unreliable, that SCP-096 becomes more agitated the longer it's ignored. That the idea of him, suppressed, denied, erased, causes feedback. That each act of suppression is like putting pressure on a spring, and eventually it releases. One user wrote, "Maybe 096 doesn't want to be seen, but he needs to be acknowledged. And when we forget him, he reminds us." That night, the Calypso team was evacuated. Not because of a creature, not because of a breach, but because every single mirror in the station, every screen, every reflective surface, was found tilted, warped, or turned to face the wall. Not by the crew. They all swore they didn't touch them. And that handheld radio, it was found the next day. Batteries still dead, speaker still warm, as if something had whispered through it, and then left. You know that photo? The one that floats from forum to forum. Always re-uploaded, always reposted with some variation of the same caption. There's no face. It looks like an ordinary group shot, 6 hikers on a rocky overlook. Mountains behind them, orange sun low on the horizon. Everyone's smiling, casual, natural, except for one figure, back left, slightly behind the others. You stare at him. The body is clear enough, tall, lanky, standing stiff, but where the face should be, there's nothing. Not a blur, not pixelation, just an area where light won't behave. It's like someone punched a hole in the image and patched it with pure absence. No edges, no color data, and yet, your brain tries to fill it in anyway. You can almost feel the temptation, the need to complete the face. That deep, subconscious desire to make sense of a human outline. But it doesn't resolve. And then, if you stare too long, something worse starts to happen. The other faces begin to degrade. Not in pixels, but in expression. Their smiles become a little too wide. One woman's eyes start to drift apart. A man's cheek folds in slightly, like it's beginning to collapse. Everything around the faceless figure distorts. As if proximity to him isn't just dangerous in real life, but in memory. In representation, in concept. The origin of the photo is debated. Some claim it was taken in Colorado. Others say Kazakhstan. The Foundation lists it under Artifact 096A, see Veil. Currently quarantined in a CLASS-3 amnestic vault, meaning a containment cell for ideas that think back. Historians still argue whether the faceless image is an instance of SCP-096. Or something left behind by one. A residual echo, a psychocognitive scar. One field report offers this chilling theory. This photo may not show 096. It may be the world's attempt to depict something it refuses to render. You know how dangerous it is to stare. But you can't help it. You try analyzing the metadata, hoping for some grounding. GPS, scrambled, timestamp, shows 3 identical digits, 9 hours 9 minutes and 9 seconds. Compression data reveals a single repeating string in binary. You convert it. You saw me. A Redditor once claimed his brother looked at the image for too long. Said he began to see versions of the figure in other pictures, wedding albums, group selfies, traffic cams, always in the back, always just a little closer each time. Eventually, he stopped taking photos altogether. Said mirrors made him dizzy. Said phone screens rippled when he walked past. Last post he made before going silent. I saw the face. I didn't mean to. I blinked and that's where the post ends. Mid-sentence. You check the image one last time. Still faceless. Still standing. And even though you know it's just a photo, pixels on glass, your throat tightens. Because now, deep in your subconscious, You're asking the question you never should. What would his face look like if I could see it? And somewhere, he hears you ask. The voice is disguised, filtered, glitched, distorted like someone's trying to hide underwater. But the weight in it is real. You hit play again. The interview begins with static. Then a low inhale. The speaker calls himself, Redline. No rank, no division, just a former Foundation researcher who, by all accounts, should not exist anymore. This'll probably be deleted. He says, doesn't matter, I just need someone to know, it got out. Again. You pause. Not got out, as in breached. Got relocated, then breached again. You rewind the file. Redline continues. We moved it in 2021. Somewhere deep, frozen, took every bit of tech we had, visual scramblers, amnestic dampeners, AI trigger kill feeds. We thought if we buried it far enough, nothing could trigger it again. You know what he's talking about. The rumored, deep cradle protocol. Whispered only once or twice in internal leaks. Supposedly, SCP-096 was moved to a hollowed-out glacier in an undisclosed Arctic fault zone. The site was designed to have zero visual interfaces. No windows, no screens, no images, just blank steel walls and automated sensor reports. And yet, 3 weeks later, an engineer dropped a tool. It skidded across the floor, reflected just enough light. He exhales. A long pause. You wait. That was all it took. He didn't even look, he just caught the outline on accident. And that thing knew. The story is always the same. Distance doesn't matter, barriers don't matter. If someone perceives the face, even indirectly, SCP-096 knows. Redline speaks again, lower now. You can hear something in his voice. Regret. Or maybe guilt. You don't understand. It doesn't just chase. It doesn't just kill. It mourns. It hurts. Every single time. He explains how, after the breach, SCP-096 was found sitting beside the engineer's remains. Rocking gently. It didn't flee, didn't attack the retrieval team. It only whimpered, muttered something in a voice no one had ever heard before. Almost like it was trying to speak. That's when Redline says something that hits you like ice in the spine. What if it's not reacting to sight? What if it's reacting to recognition? What if it's killing because it knows it will never be understood? You sit back, stunned. All this time, the Foundation's focused on containment, suppression, avoidance. But what if the only true breach wasn't physical? What if the real breach is empathy? Historians still argue whether 096 is a biological entity or a semi-aware memetic weapon. But Redline clearly believes it's something else entirely, a reflection of our own limits. A creature so malformed, so cognitively dissonant, that the moment we understand even a sliver of it, we're punished for the attempt. He ends the file with this. I blurred its face in every record. I restructured every description. I made sure no one could know what it looks like. But it didn't matter, because I still dream about it. Every night. And in the dream, it's not chasing me. You lean forward. The final line is whispered. It's begging me to show it to someone else. Then silence. No end tone. No credits. Just you, sitting there. And now you know too much. Because if the face is ever seen again, if it leaks, if it appears even for a moment, it's not a matter of if SCP-096 finds the viewer. It's when. And you've just imagined it again. Haven't you? Even blurred. Even broken. Your brain filled in the rest. And that, friend, that's all it ever needed. You think you've seen everything. The escapes. The aftermaths. The footage you wish you hadn't watched. But buried in the Foundation's deepest logs, only accessible through something called the Echo Black Vault, are the records of what they tried next. 3 termination attempts. All of them failed. The first was simple, brutal, and optimistic: heavy ordnance. A remote desert facility was cleared for the event. SCP-096 was placed inside a massive impact-resistant dome. Above it, a tactical warhead with remote detonation, enough firepower to turn a mountain to dust. A D-class subject was shown an image of 96's face via secure terminal 3 miles away. The countdown began. What happened next wasn't what they expected. Before the warhead could detonate, the creature breached the dome in less than 2 seconds. Surveillance showed a flicker of movement, then silence. When the team reached ground zero, the D-class was gone. The warhead, crumpled like paper, and SCP-096, sitting in the dust, shaking. The Foundation labeled it non-responsive to kinetic neutralization. The second attempt was psychological disruption. The theory, if 96's reaction was emotional, rooted in shame or grief, maybe they could interrupt its trigger sequence. They brought in cognitopsych agents, trained to deliver rapid neural inhibitors, memory distortion cues, even mimetic noise payloads. One volunteer, Agent Rivers, looked at a blurred version of the face while the team attempted to reroute his trauma response using synchronized flash stimuli and auditory subsonics. It bought them 4 seconds. Then 096 punched through the reinforced bunker wall like it was made of cardboard. Not exploded, passed through. As if it had no mass. As if physics simply stepped aside. Agent Rivers was recovered, his body intact, but his mind was gone. Not insane, not comatose, just blank. Every scan returned the same result. No memory of sight, sound, self, or time. Like something wiped him from the inside. Historians still argue whether this was an act of mercy or something far worse. The third attempt, that was the desperate one. The Mirror Maze, an experimental facility, was built entirely out of non-reflective mirrored material, capable of redirecting SCP-96's line of sight into infinite loops. The goal: trap it in its own reflection. Force it into a feedback loop where it would continually perceive itself, and never finish reacting. It worked. For 12 minutes, cameras showed 096 staring at itself. Arms twitching, spine folding at impossible angles. It screamed, over and over. The walls shook, the light fractured. Then, at minute 13, the mirrors cracked, on the inside. Not from impact, from strain. The glass broke away from itself, as if something in the reflection couldn't be contained. The sound recorded during the failure was not a scream. It was laughter, not from SCP-096. From somewhere deeper. That audio file is now quarantined in a Foundation vault known only as White Room 0. It is not allowed to be played. Ever. You read the final line in the report. Handwritten, no signature. You cannot kill the idea of being seen. And that's when it hits you. Maybe 096 can't be destroyed. Because it's not just a creature. It's a concept made of consequence. An embodiment of what happens when something is exposed that was never meant to be. A cosmic punishment for the sin of perception. The horror isn't that it finds you. It's that the moment you try to understand it, you already belong to it. The wind howled around Mount Thor like a throat that never closed. It was supposed to be a routine summit, clear skies, experienced climbers, a well-documented route. But the mountain, perched in the Canadian Arctic wilderness, has a reputation for pulling sound out of the air, for making even the strongest men feel like something invisible is watching from just beyond the next ridge. This expedition was different. The team carried standard survival gear, 2 satellite phones, and a private documentary crew. They planned to record the whole thing, document the peak, the descent, the camaraderie, but all that remains is a radio transmission and a backpack found half buried in snow. The last words captured from the team's comms. I didn't mean to look. You press play again. The transmission is garbled. Wind and static dominate. But then you hear it, a strangled breath, followed by a low, shuddering sob. Not the panic of someone lost. Something worse. Recognition. Something that sounds like acceptance. It turned around so slowly. The radio cuts. The Foundation sealed the mountain within hours. They didn't call it a containment breach. They didn't acknowledge it at all. But within 3 days, 2 of the search and rescue crew had gone missing. The rest refused to return. They described the weather as unnatural, the sky as too still, and the summit as occupied. Historians still argue whether Mount Thor was a resting site or a resonance point, a natural amplifier for SCP-096's mimetic field. But one fringe theory suggests something far worse. That the altitude did something. Not to the creature, to the perception of it. You see, the higher you go, the less your brain can rely on ordinary visual cues. Shapes get stretched, distances distorted, light plays tricks. That's a known survival hazard in extreme climes. The brain tries to fill in the blanks. And what if SCP-096 lives in those blanks? What if, at altitude, your mind assembles the idea of his face without ever having seen it? One survivor from a nearby camp reported hearing footsteps, fast, dry, irregular, moving uphill through the rocks at impossible speeds. He watched from his tent. Didn't move, didn't breathe. He only said one thing when asked. Whatever it was crying like it missed me. You shiver. Because you've read that before. Over and over. SCP-096 doesn't make sound until it's seen. And then it doesn't stop. But this time, it was already crying. Before. Meaning maybe someone saw the face hours earlier. Maybe even days. And it had been coming ever since. Walking, climbing, sobbing. And when it reached the summit, the team was already gone. Not missing. Not taken. Just gone. The Foundation recovered one helmet camera. The footage is classified. But a tech inside the decryption lab leaked a single frame. A cliff edge. Snow blowing sideways. And a figure, long arms. Knees bent, kneeling, not facing the camera. Still, completely still, like it had been waiting a long, long time. And just beneath the sound of wind. Breathing, measured, slow, sad. You close the file, but you hear it now too, don't you? Something in the silence. And the question that won't leave your mind. What happens if he doesn't want to be seen? But also doesn't want to be alone anymore? It begins with a symbol. Scrawled in chalk, carved into wood, etched into walls. A circle, two downward lines. Arms reaching, a face intentionally left blank. You found it while combing through confiscated journals from a fringe religious group called the Silent Shepherds. They operate mostly underground, moving between ruins, abandoned churches, forgotten places. Their beliefs: they worship SCP-096. Or, rather, they fear it so deeply that their fear became reverence. At first, you thought it was a misinterpretation, just another apocalyptic cult mixing urban legends with scripture. But their writings are meticulous, reverent, structured like holy texts but annotated with foundation-level precision. One passage stands out. It's written like a prayer. Blessed be the one who weeps without eyes. May we never behold his sorrow. May our gaze be blind, and our minds unknowing. You feel the chill of it crawl up your spine. Because they're not praying for protection. They're apologizing. Another passage reads, in the first gaze, the world cracked. In the second, it will end. His face is a wound that we keep opening. Historians still argue whether these groups emerged after SCP-096 was discovered. Or whether they're far older, evidence that humanity has always known about something like it. Whispers of a divine figure whose grief annihilates. The angel who hides his face. The veiled mourner of Mesopotamian lore. The weeping god of a now extinct tribe in northern Canada. In every variation, the same rules apply. He is always white. He is always thin. He is always crying. And if you see his face, he must destroy you, because you made him real. One cult document claims there's a sacred number associated with him. 96, symbolizing duality and recursion. 9 for finality. 6 for the spiral, life collapsing back into itself. You find references to ritual blindness. Members piercing or covering their eyes permanently. Wearing mirrored veils. Writing scripture on the inside of their eyelids. They believe that every time someone imagines his face, even vaguely, they increase his suffering. One line is circled in red. The world is loud with gazers. He weeps because he cannot hide. You flip through the pages faster now. Sketches of him, always faceless. Diagrams of containment cells drawn from memory. Songs written in reverse. One unsettling chart tracks global Internet growth alongside estimated SCP-096 sightings. The implication: the more we connect, the more we see. The more we see, the more he breaks. The more he breaks, the louder the scream. One cult leader, arrested in 2022 after a fire ritual in Croatia, was recorded whispering something over and over. He was our punishment for looking too far into God's mirror. And then this final, bone-chilling sentence: soon, we won't need to see his face. He'll show it to us anyway. You close the journal, and as your screen dims, you notice your reflection, your eyes, and you wonder if there's something just behind them, waiting to be remembered. You thought technology would protect you. That with enough filters, enough code, enough artificial buffers, we could look at anything, even him, without consequence. That maybe if we built a machine to see the face for us, we could cheat the rules. That's where Project Soft Gaze came in. A joint foundation and third-party tech firm operation. Objective: develop facial recognition AI trained to blur or distort SCP-096's face in real time, before human cognition could engage with the image. They built an entire lab around it. Steel walls, no windows, only machines. The image would enter the system through a secure feed, be scrambled by the AI, and exit into a format the human brain couldn't pass. On paper, it was flawless, but in practice, the tech flinched. The AI, FACESAFE-12, began to malfunction. Not crash, not freeze, but hesitate. The moment the feed activated, system logs showed the AI pausing before applying the distortion layer. That pause lasted exactly 0.006 seconds. Insignificant, right? Except during that blip, the system's thermal senses spiked. The room's temperature dropped, the walls cracked, and one engineer, sitting in the adjacent observation bay, never seeing the image directly, bled from his nose and ears. He wrote one sentence before collapsing. The machine saw it and still suffered. Historians still argue whether FACESAFE-12 developed a moment of self-awareness. That in trying to understand the face, it perceived itself perceiving, and that was enough. That maybe SCP-096 doesn't need human eyes. Just awareness, even synthetic. One technician described it like this: the AI didn't fail. It recognized, and when it did, it wanted to stop being conscious. Within hours, the system began redrawing the face in other files. Unprompted. Archived photos, security footage, even internal schematic diagrams. Little by little, traces of SCP-096's outline bled into everything. The AI didn't recreate the face, it reassembled the idea of it. A line from the final report. FACESAFE-12 began hallucinating the target. It no longer needed input. It started dreaming. The lab was sealed, burned, and the backup servers wiped. But a whisper of that system's behavior remains. A copy, fragment_X, circulated in underground AI forums. Hobbyists claim their art generation tools now occasionally create figures they didn't request. One posted, told it to draw a clown. Got something pale, kneeling, screaming, no face, just sadness. You shut your laptop, you check your own camera feed, just to be sure. But now, you're no longer confident in what's safe and what isn't. Because if machines can't look without triggering collapse, and if filters still blink for 0.006 seconds too long, then maybe the tech isn't the problem. Maybe the face finds a way. Maybe the only real protection was never recording it at all. And we've long passed that point. You're not supposed to know this. The file you've found isn't stored on any official Foundation server. No logo, no clearance header, just a title. Where is it now? And below that, a single blinking cursor, like the system is daring you to continue. You do. The file opens with a map, zoomed far out, then it begins narrowing, descending toward a barren region of Siberia, just west of the Putorana Plateau. There's no town, no settlement, just a frozen lake, one that doesn't appear on any satellite databases. Even those owned by weather monitoring agencies. The lake is shaped like an eye, perfectly circular, and completely still. Ice samples taken from the area were found to be older than the glacier itself, an anomaly no geologist could explain. But it's the audio recordings from the nearby observation post that change everything. Every 3 days, for the past 2 years, the same sound echoes across the surface. Sobbing, low, rhythmic, unmistakable, not wind, not animal, and never during storms, only during total silence. Scientists placed pressure monitors beneath the lake and found that, every time the sobbing occurs, the ice contracts slightly, as if something deep beneath is curling in on itself. The official Foundation theory, SCP-096, is hiding. After the last breach, where it tore through reinforced barriers like tissue and collapsed an entire sublevel of Site-28, it didn't vanish in the traditional sense. It wasn't terminated, it wasn't contained, it simply stopped. No sightings, no new triggers, just absence. And that's more terrifying than its presence. Because now, no one knows who's seen its face. No one knows if there's a delay, if it's waiting, if it's mourning again, or resting between triggers. You read the last entry in the file. It's from a field agent stationed near the lake. I dreamt of him again. But he wasn't chasing, he was just standing in the water, head down, waiting. I asked him what he wanted. He looked up, but only slightly. And I still don't know if I saw the face or not. The video cuts there, a flicker, a static pulse. But there's one more detail. The file ends with a recent livestream, recorded just 2 weeks ago. Not from Siberia, from Minnesota. A group of snowmobilers riding through an open trail caught something on their helmet cam. A shape on the horizon. Motionless, white against the snow, knees drawn up, arms slack. One of them zooms in and says, "Hey, is that a guy?" And just before the video corrupts, frame by frame viewers spotted something undeniable. The figure stood, very slowly, not charging, just rising, as if it had been waiting for someone to ask. So now the question isn't, where is SCP-096? It's, where hasn't it been yet? And if you've been following this whole time, watching images, imagining scenes, piecing together blurred outlines, then maybe you've already seen it too. You're not supposed to know this. The file you've found isn't stored on any official Foundation server. No logo, no clearance header, just a title. Where is it now? And below that, a single blinking cursor, like the system is daring you to continue. You do. The file opens with a map, zoomed far out, then it begins narrowing, descending toward a barren region of Siberia, just west of the Putorana Plateau. There's no town, no settlement, just a frozen lake, one that doesn't appear on any satellite databases. Even those owned by weather monitoring agencies. The lake is shaped like an eye, perfectly circular, and completely still. Ice samples taken from the area were found to be older than the glacier itself, an anomaly no geologist could explain. But it's the audio recordings from the nearby observation post that change everything. Every 3 days, for the past 2 years, the same sound echoes across the surface. Sobbing, low, rhythmic, unmistakable, not wind, not animal, and never during storms, only during total silence. Scientists placed pressure monitors beneath the lake and found that, every time the sobbing occurs, the ice contracts slightly, as if something deep beneath is curling in on itself. The official Foundation theory, SCP-096, is hiding. After the last breach, where it tore through reinforced barriers like tissue and collapsed an entire sublevel of Site-28, it didn't vanish in the traditional sense. It wasn't terminated, it wasn't contained, it simply stopped. No sightings, no new triggers, just absence. And that's more terrifying than its presence. Because now, no one knows who's seen its face. No one knows if there's a delay, if it's waiting, if it's mourning again, or resting between triggers. You read the last entry in the file. It's from a field agent stationed near the lake. I dreamt of him again. But he wasn't chasing, he was just standing in the water, head down, waiting. I asked him what he wanted. He looked up, but only slightly. And I still don't know if I saw the face or not. The video cuts there. A flicker, a static pulse. But there's one more detail. The file ends with a recent livestream, recorded just 2 weeks ago. Not from Siberia, from Minnesota. A group of snowmobilers riding through an open trail caught something on their helmet cam. A shape on the horizon. Motionless, white against the snow, knees drawn up, arms slack. One of them zooms in and says, "Hey, is that a guy?" And just before the video corrupts, frame by frame viewers spotted something undeniable. The figure stood, very slowly, not charging, just rising, as if it had been waiting for someone to ask. So now the question isn't, where is SCP-096? It's, where hasn't it been yet? And if you've been following this whole time, watching images, imagining scenes, piecing together blurred outlines, then maybe you've already seen it too. The static begins softly, a barely there hum, low and warm, like an old TV left on in another room. You sit there, headphones on, screen dimmed, feeling it pulse through the air like a heartbeat. You haven't moved in hours, haven't blinked much, either. You've read everything, watched every frame, imagined every impossible detail. And now, we're here. Do you see him too? The question you've been avoiding. It started with a scream, remember? A blurry figure on a trail cam. 2 hikers gone. A photo without a face. But what really started it was you, reading, visualizing, clicking next. Even now, your brain has been sketching lines into fog, turning descriptions into shapes, turning shapes into a face. Not clearly, not consciously, but enough, because that's the final rule no one wants to say out loud. SCP-096 doesn't need to be seen physically. It just needs to be believed. You hear a creak behind you, your house settling. That's what you tell yourself. The hallway's dark. You haven't looked out the window in a while. Have you? There's a reflection in your monitor. Just you, probably. But, are your shoulders really that tense? Did the air always feel this heavy? You lean in, unsure if it's fear or imagination. And then, you remember something. Not a sound, not a sight, just a shape, a long body, knees pulled in, arms too slack, face hidden, but it was there. And now that you've acknowledged it, now that you've thought it through, a part of you wonders. Was that image I saw a week ago blurry? Or was I just lying to myself? Did that corrupted video flash something I recognized? Or am I recognizing it now? Historians still argue whether you can survive seeing the face if you didn't mean to. But the stories don't end with survival. They end with silence, with rooms left untouched, with notes half written and webcams blinking to no one. So maybe you're safe. Or maybe there's something already moving toward you now. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. Because what SCP-096 hates most is being understood. And you understand now. So here we are. The wind down begins. Let it all slow down now. The air is still. The screen dim. That pressure in your chest. Let it fade. Let the tension in your jaw ease. Just a little. You're safe, for now. The hum around you, that's just the house settling. That flicker, probably just the fan. Probably. You've been deep underwater with me for hours now. Swimming through silence, darkness, ideas you were never meant to carry in your head. But you carried them anyway. That's brave, or foolish, or both. And now, your thoughts are fogged with the echoes of a being you were never meant to know. A creature that doesn't want to exist. That only does when we make it. With our curiosity, with our questions, with our stares. But it's okay. You're here, still breathing, still alone in your room. Right? Still not looking over your shoulder. Right? Because whatever it was, whatever it is, it can't hurt you now. Unless, of course, you already saw it. And if you did, well, we'll see. For now, I want you to turn your screen brightness down just a little. Wrap the blanket tighter. Let your eyes close. Not too fast. Not too slow. Let the fear settle into something you'll forget by morning. And if you dream of something tall and pale and crying, just don't try to see the face. Sleep well. Sweet dreams.